All right, all right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Rochester Xamarin. It's January 15th. That says 2019. I didn't update it. It's really 2020. My mistake. First of the year.
Based on
Well, welcome, everyone. I'm excited for a packed year of Xamarin talks and mobile.net talks. I have so many people asking to talk here, so excited for the year ahead. I'd like to thank our sponsors. I work at File on Q, and they sponsor the go-to meeting, so we can hold these virtually for anyone in the world to come and attend our small corner of .NET. And the .NET Foundation pays for our Meetup subscription and gets us hooked in with the .NET community. So thank you to our sponsors. Our announcements. There's always a lot going on in the Xamarin community, and I can never keep up with all of it. So, uh, in the future, if you ever have something you want to share, just find me on Twitter, send me a message, and I will put it on this list. Uh, but let's go through what I have today. So, Uno Platform 2.0 has been released. If you're not familiar with what Uno Platform is, it's yet another cross-platform mobile development framework that is built on Xamarin Native. Company Inventive from Montreal has been building it, and they've been doing a lot of work since they announced it the other year, and getting a lot of community involvement. So they made their 2.0 release this month, and some of the big things that are coming with that is hot reload support, dark mode support. It's a really interesting set of tooling, quite different than Xamarin.Forms in my opinion. I know this is announcements, but my 5 second pitch on it is if you want your app to look exactly the same across all your different platforms, I would go with Uno over Xamarin.Forms. If I want more uh, native, more particular, more granular control, I'm going to go with Xamarin.Forms. I digress. Some cool stuff with that. You guys can check it out. Uh, this week, the Microsoft was having their .NET Conf, which is a virtual conference. That they did a 24-hour session of it the other day this week, and it was all focused on Blazor. Instead of when they traditionally have it in the fall, it's kind of everything. This was a Blazor talk, and one of the cool things that they announced at it was this experimental mobile Blazor bindings. And that's a lot of words to say. I can now use Blazor to write a Xamarin.Forms app. And there's a whole blog about this, and I'm just using the Blazor development model. It's all built right on top of Xamarin and Xamarin.Forms, so it's not something to compete with Xamarin.Forms, but it's something that still uses all of the core work that the Xamarin.Forms team has been doing and the Xamarin community has been working towards. It's just another way for you to build your mobile apps in C Sharp. And one of the interesting things I came across, I don't know if the blog actually calls it out. Uh, no, they don't explicitly call it out. But what you could do with this, which I found interesting, is you could have Xamarin.Forms app that has a XAML page, uh, a content page built by C Sharp, and a content page built as a Razor file, all running together. So if you have someone that's not really confident in XAML, but they don't want to write C Sharp, and they're very good in Razor syntax, they can go and work with you side by side. So that's a really interesting project that they're working on. Moving right along. Xamarin Essentials is getting ready to release 1.4.0. They got a pre-release out. If you're not familiar with Xamarin Essentials, it's a really nice toolkit to do. It's got a lot of different plugins in it. Do they have the whole list of plugins in here? Uh, I'll post the GitHub link, but it provides connectivity plugins so you can check your network status, GPS, bunch of this little plugins like that. And one of the things I learned recently about Xamarin Essentials is it's not just for Xamarin.Forms. So you can go over and use it in Uno. You can go use it if you're working in Xamarin Native. So if you got just like a Xamarin Android project, you can go and use it. So it definitely simplifies a lot of things that like push notifications or rendering local notifications is another one. So it simplifies a lot of those things for you, so you don't need to deal with it. And moving to my last announcement, I got a tweet from Beth Macy about .NET Conf. Since they had the all-day Blazer this week, they announced on March 23rd of this year they're going to do an all-day Xamarin conference. It's going to be the same style as .NET Conf, virtual, anyone and everyone can attend. It was exciting to hear that they're going to be doing different .NET Confs focused on different technologies. And that is my announcements for this month. Moving along, we have Chris Miller here to do a presentation on dark mode with Xamarin.Forms. He's a Microsoft MVP, a Pluralsight author. He lives in the same state as me, so I already like him even more. And before we get started with the presentation, for some of you that are new here, feel free during the presentation to ask questions in the chat, and I'll I'll monitor those for Chris and ask them. If you got something that you really, really need an answer for, feel free to open your mic. But if you just got a simple question, ask it in the chat, and I'll try and find time to bring it up. Without any further ado, Chris, I'm gonna give you screen so you can start presenting. Where did it go? All right. New GoToMeeting interface. Make presenter. There it is. All right.
I don't see anything. Yeah, I don't show up as a presenter yet.
Oh, new interface.
Okay, cool. All right, now it's asking, which is good. So I can select the right monitor. And can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Take it away.
Awesome. All right. So tonight's session is supporting dark mode in Xamarin.Forms. Come to the dark side. We have candy. A little bit about me. I'm a software architect for Tyler Technologies, working in the K-12 transportation market, which means we route school buses. You can find me on Twitter at Another Lab. I seldomly blog at rajapet.com, and you can find me at all the usual places, either as Another Lab or as Christopher or Chris Miller. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a Pluralsight author. And I just want to do a quick plug for Albany Code Camp if anyone would like to attend or present. This will be April 25th at Latham, which is right by Albany Airport. For more information, just go to albanycodecamp.org. And a shameless plug time, I am a Pluralsight author, and my most recent course was published back in December on Xamarin.Forms Shell. And we are hiring. If anyone's looking for a job, please email me at chris.miller@tylertech.com. We are hiring all over the country. But enough plugs. So what is dark mode? I think at this point, everyone knows what dark mode is on a phone, especially with iOS 13. It was a big splash last August and September when it was released. You can put your phone into dark mode. Bit of a smaller splash in Android. It was officially added as a setting in Android Q, but it's actually been around internally in Android since Android 2.3 for you. And of course, desktop, web, yada, yada, yada. Everyone supports dark mode now. So why the bother? Well, you want to make sure your app looks and functions well in a dark mode. Some components will automatically update themselves to use a dark mode theme. Others will not. And unless you do something in your app, it could look a little disjointed. It also looks a little odd for the user when all their apps support dark mode and yours doesn't. So yours is just this bright white speck in the middle of their screen. It's also easy to read at night. You know, if someone's using their phone at night or in their car, you know, as a passenger in their car, you know, it's a lot darker. It's dark mode. and it does use less power on an OLED screen. Um, if you have like a higher end iPhone, if you have a Samsung phone and it's got an OLED screen, it takes considerably less power to do a dark screen than it does a light screen because it's not backlit. It's just the pixels themselves lighting up. If you have a Pixel phone and you're running Android 10, when you go into battery saver mode, it turns on dark theme automatically for the power savings. And as mentioned before, you want to avoid the UI UX clashes where parts of your app are picking up dark mode and some parts are not. So you want your app to look the way you designed it in both light mode and dark mode. So for platform support, for iOS, it was added to iOS 13 in the fall of 2013 as dark mode. There's an easy-to-use API for mode notification messages. For Android, it was officially added as a feature in Android Q, or Android 10, but it's been unofficially around since Android Froyo. When Google implemented Android Auto, they put in a dark mode because in a car you had to have it. So it's been around for a long time. It just wasn't exposed as easily to the user as a dark mode switch. Though other companies like Samsung have tapped into it and have had a widget for it for ages. This is actually incorrect. I thought there was an easy-to-use API for mode notification. It's not as clearly defined as is in iOS. But the good news is it's pretty much automatic for the end user. So, do you need to make any changes to your code to support dark mode? Well, yes, and that's why we're here tonight. The method I use is to replace any hard-coded references with styles references. You'll need a small amount of platform-specific code to detect the current mode on either Android or iOS. And then you just reload the styles when the mode changes from light to dark or from dark to light. If you're not using XAML-based styling in your forms, then you're missing out. It allows you to keep your UI dry. Do not repeat yourself. It also makes it easy to change the colors on the fly, and it makes your color scheme a little bit testable for using a UI testing framework. So what about images? You want to make sure your icons and other images work for both light and dark. And it depends on what you're doing. If you're using icons for tab bars, you want to make sure that they either work in both, or that you swap them out, or you can change the color on the fly. I like to use an icon font for button images because that way I can change the color on the fly. So how do we style? Well, we take all the colors that are used in the XAML markup and put them in a theme. Then you set the application's resource to that theme, change the color references in the XAML to use dynamic resource bindings, and then you can test that theme. So in our app.xaml, in the application resources, in the resource dictionary, you set your resource dictionary, and then you set the source attribute to your theme file. The convention is based on whatever you prefer. I usually put everything into a styles folder. So I have a light theme and a dark theme. For testing, you could literally just put one of them in and switch them back and forth. What I usually do is I have a default theme and I use that for things that are common, and then I use that as a source for my light and dark. So here's a sample light theme. We set the background color to white. We set the primary text color to black. And we set a default style for labels. So the text color will always be the primary text color, which in this case is black because it's the light theme. And then in our XAML, we make sure that we set the background color to the dynamic resource of the background color. And then we can set our labels. In this case, I'm arbitrarily setting it, even though it would have picked it up automatically from what we had before. But in this case, I am setting it specifically to text primary color. And you can see there's other ways of doing it. You can, real quickly, you can have dynamic resources, static resources, and off we go. So now what? You do next, after you get your light theme working, you do a dark theme. So this is our light theme that I had before, where we had white as the background color and we had black for the text color. And this is what it looks like as the dark theme. As you can see now, the background color has been set to black, and the primary color has been set to almost white. It's like a slightly translucent white, so it's not as jarring on the eyes. But we still have the label set to having the default text color be the text primary color. Setting a default control style takes care of a lot of heavy lifting, so that way you don't have to set it for every single control, and it just makes it much easier to globally change stuff. And you can always set the controls for specific controls at any time you want. So how do we wire it up? Well, we're going to create an interface in the shared code, and that will be what defines light and dark. And then we write platform-specific classes that implement that interface. And then we do a dependency injection of that class into the shared code, and we call that code from the app class. So here's our interface. Whoop, sorry, a little too fast. So we have an interface called iEnvironment, and it has a method that will return a task of theme called getOperatingSystemTheme. And theme is defined as light and dark. So on the platform side in iOS, the implementation of that interface is going to have two methods: the getOperatingSystemTheme, and then getVisibleViewController, which is something that getOperatingSystemTheme will need. And we'll go into that when we go into our demo. So under getOperatingSystemTheme, the first thing we do is we check the version number. If we're version 12 or higher, then we know that we're supporting a dark mode. Otherwise, we just return the light theme and call it a day. And then we get our current view controller, and that's where we're calling the getVisibleViewController method. And then from that view controller, there's a collection called trait collection, and we can get the user interface style. And from that, we can check that, and we can determine whether you're in light mode or dark mode. And then we just return theme light or theme dark. For Android, night mode was added in Android 4.0, so it has worked for ages. We need to add current activity plugin, which is a plugin that James Montemagno wrote that makes it easy to get the current activity in Android code. That's the only extra plugin we need to do this. And once again, we're using that, excuse me, we're doing an implementation of iEnvironment, and we're going to have it called getOperatingSystemTheme. So in here, first thing we do is we check our version for 4.0 or above. If not, we return light. At this point, I'd be very surprised to find a phone that old that was still working. And then we're going to call cross-current activity.current.appcontext.resources.configuration.UI mode and mask it out with UI mode.nightmask. And that will give us the information that tells us for light mode or dark mode, because there could be other bits set with it. We only care about the night mask. So either we're in night mode or we're in dark mode. If we're in night mode, we return the dark theme. If we're in light mode, we return light theme.
Chris, can we stop for a quick question?
Absolutely.
All right. So we had a question. If I set my styles for each of the controls and the user changes to dark mode in iOS, does the OS override my styles, or it only changes styles of things like the status bar and such?
So if you're in iOS and you switch from light mode to dark mode, that's going to change the color palette across the board. And depending on what the defaults are in your controls, you'll either pick them up or you won't pick them up. And like the list view will switch to dark almost immediately. And what will happen is and we'll show us when we go in the demo, when you change the mode and go back into the app, we're going to be using on resume to check the mode. And if you don't handle the light and dark theme, you'll look a little jarring, because any system dialog that pops up be dark skin. Will be in the current theme.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the theme has its own set of palettes that it will default a lot of the controls to, and it's going to look jarring unless you have your own styles to override whatever that theme sets it to.
Kind of. The Xamarin.Forms controls have default properties, and some of them will look correct when you change the theme, and some of them will not. Like a list view will pick up the current background color for whatever the theme is without you having to set it on iOS. Not on Android, but on iOS.
Gotcha.
So for the most part, it's hard to tell, and what you basically want to do is just test everything and just arbitrarily don't use default colors. Set your color palette to what you want it to be, and make sure you have it set for both light and dark. Because some things will change automatically, some things will not, and it will look really jarring in dark mode when you don't have stuff that match.
All right, and that makes sense to me. I'll stop you again if we. Yes, yes, you said yes. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Stop me at any time for questions, and I am from New York. I do talk fast. So in our app.xaml.cs, we're going to have a method called setTheme. This will get called when we change the theme. And let's see, so if we pass in a theme and it's the current theme, well, obviously we do nothing. Then we set our little variable for watching things to it, and then we do a switch. So if we run light and we go to dark, what we do is we set app.currentResources to a new instance of dark theme, or we set it to a new instance of the light theme. And to check theme is pretty easy. Sorry, too fast. So we're going to call our dependency service get iEnvironment, get operating system theme, and then we call that. So when the app starts up, it's going to call check theme. On resume, it will call check theme. So you'll pick up the current theme when the app first starts up. If the user switches from one theme to another while your app's running, as soon as you resume, it'll pick it back up again. Now, there is one more instance to be aware of that I don't have the complete code in the slide deck for, but I'll show it in the code. With iOS and with Android, you can set it so that your app will switch, your device will switch from light mode to dark mode based on time. And at that point, your app is still running, but the theme will change behind you. With iOS, there is an API call and an event that you can trap, and we'll go into that in a little bit. With Android, they do not have that, but according to the documentation, it's supposed to basically recreate your activity, which I think would trigger on resume. So what about setting colors in code? You can still do that. If you're setting colors based on certain conditions, you can still do that. You just want to make sure that you have something in your code that you can quickly check to see what theme you're in, so you can pick the right color. So if you're in dark mode, for a warning, you would do like a darker red as opposed to doing a more bright red in light mode. So if you're using Shell, out of the box, Shell uses static resources for colors. You'll want to change that to dynamic resource so it'll pick up changes in the colors. Otherwise, when you reload a theme, your shell won't change color. But other than that, it should work just fine. So listing new changes, which is what I was talking about just a minute ago, you can respond to theme change events by the OS, mainly under iOS. So for iOS, you listen to UI trait, you wait for a UI trait collection change event and write that in a custom page renderer, and that'll work just across the board. Android does not have an equivalent event, as far as I could tell, but activities are recreated, and that should pick up the change in themes. So, enough with the slides. Let's go into our demo. And we get out of this. And so what I did was I took the standard shell template app that comes with Xamarin.Forms and tweaked it to support both light and dark mode. So what we're looking at here is the interface. Is the font big enough for people to read? Because I can make it bigger or smaller.
Maybe kick it up to just one more. Yeah. That's good.
There we go. All right, cool. So we have our Get operating system theme, which will be implemented on the platforms. And so for Android, we have plugin.currentActivity, which is literally just a new Get package from James Montemagno, who makes all our lives that much easier to live with. And we just have your typical Xamarin.Forms platform-specific code. We're going to have a dependency. We have environment Android, which implements iEnvironment, and we have our task method, Get operating system theme, which is identical to what we had in the slide deck. For iOS, there's a little more code, and what on earth just happened here? All right, well, let's embiggen this and I'll make it go away. So we have Get operating system theme. So we only need to worry about if you're running iOS 13 or higher. Get visible view controller is that other method that I didn't bother to put in the slide because it's literally just regular iOS code. All we're just calling is just a bunch of boilerplate code that's going to just get us our current controller so we can check the UI mode. And let's make this go away. Alrighty, so what is going on here? Here we go, cool. So here we have our theme, defining my colors. I have some extra colors in here just for completion. I have to find some styles so I can set the colors. So I have a default style for label. And basically for some of the other ones that are in the list use, we'll get into in a second. So dark mode, pretty much the same thing, just different colors. This is one of the things you do trial and error testing. And so if we go to our about page, first thing we do is we set our background color. And then anything that needs a color, like stack layout, we set the background color. I'm setting my text colors for the labels and down here. And once again, down here. Like I said, it's pretty easy to do. And when you're testing, when you're doing the wrong colors, it pops out. So for, let's see, items page, same thing. We have a list view. We set our style to list item text style, which we had defined up here, which will set our color, and it'll also set some additional properties. And where were we? And we had our other label, which did the same thing. Now in our app shell.xaml, whoops, wrong one. Actually, we don't care about the shell. Where were we? App XAML, which I probably closed. Oop. There we go. So out of the box, we set our styles to the light theme.xaml, just so we have a baseline to go with. In our code, I'm declaring a property. I'm adding a property to the app that'll set the theme and it'll default to light. That way, if you need to set anything else in code, you have a public property you can check. They'll tell you what theme you're in. So on start, we're going to call check theme. On resume, we're going to call check theme. And check theme was just going through dependency servers to call get operating system theme. And then we call set theme, and that will give us light or dark. And the other thing was responding to the iOS code for responding to changes while it's running, which would be a page renderer. So on element changed, we call set app theme, and in trait collection did change. This is where we just say set app theme, and all that does is it calls to get the check theme of that we have back in the app code. But Trait collection did change. Will get fired if the if the if the theme changes while the app is running and not paused. There, as far as I can tell, there is not an equivalent in Android for this. This is an iOS thing. So now let's run it. Let's see, what is my simulator running in? We're in dark mode now, so before we start, oh, wrong way. So we go down to developer. No, we're actually in light mode. And cross my fingers to the demo gods. And we'll fire up. Okay, this is your basic, this is the shell template app that comes with it, that comes with Xamarin.Forms. So you have a list, a detail page you can add. There's an about page, and it looks like that. So now if, we do this while we're running. And we go dark. Whoops. App's still running, but we've changed colors. The app did not restart. It was just the on resume event changed it, and we went over to here.
Question on that page. If you go back to your home page there on the running app, we were talking earlier about some of the whites being not as jarring. Is there any type of filter that you could apply to the image so it's not as bright?
I set the alpha value of the color to make it less bright.
Or like on the about page though. So
Oh,
like the
that.
Xamarin, yeah, the Xamarin image there is a much brighter white.
Yeah.
Is there a good way to handle because I mean, the thing where my mind starts spiraling is like every image is going to be different. I don't want to just put a general alpha over that image. Is there a way
No.
you recommend to handle this type of scenario?
Yeah, it's gonna be dependent on your image. So for something like this, I think this is just a bitmap. I would have done this as a vector image and just set the color at runtime. I literally just would have used an icon image for the Xamagon and just spell the word Xamarin with just text and change it that way. If you have basically basic simple images, I would just recolor it and just change it, and just you would have that as a property in your theme. So when you set the image source, it would get it as a dynamic resource. Like I said, it depends on the image. Completely depends on the image. For these buttons down here, they're using bitmaps. I typically use font icons, so I can change so I have the colors are properties. And I think Xamarin.Forms shell does some things with the colors anyways, because the highlighted one is brighter than the regular one, than with the non-selected ones. But yeah, this is kind of jarring, and you wouldn't want this actually in your app. So depending on your image and what your image sources are, something like this, having two copies of this image, one is light and one is dark, isn't going to add much weight to the application because it's a very simple bitmap. But stuff like that, I typically go for vectors so I can change the colors. My day will be very happy when they finally support SVG natively in Xamarin.Forms, so I don't have to do any weird conversions.
I think that day's a little off.
Yeah, it is off.
Cool. No, that answers my question.
All right, cool. So under Android, so what we're gonna do is let's stop this guy and come back to me. I of course was running everything just before it, and all my Android emulators fell apart. So we're actually going to be using an actual Android device because I know that will work. And so start project. Now, let's see, let's fire this guy up. And, oh, might help if I bring simulator. All right, so the first thing you know that we're partially in dark mode. The list view here didn't change. On iOS, it did change. The background color of the list view for iOS in Xamarin.Forms will pick up dark mode. Android, it doesn't. The rest of the app looks fine. Looks more or less like what we saw earlier. So what we do to fix that is, let's just get out of this, and then we go to our items page. And go to our list view. And set the background color. And let's fire that puppy back up again. And boom, we're back in business. So that's what I was saying earlier about some things work just fine. Some things will work one way in Android as well in iOS. So just assume that you're going to set your colors for everything, and everything will work much better. Does anyone have any questions about the demo, or would like to see anything else with it?
Yeah, we got a question, and I was actually going to type an answer out to it, but so John's asking, let's say we got the devices in dark mode, and my app allows me to select light mode, so it allows me to select which mode I'm in, regardless of what mode the device is in. Is there a way for the platform to select the correct imagery sources, assuming things like pings rather than SVGs. And I was just going to blurt out that if you're doing that, you might create like a SQLite database or something to store which mode your app is in, so it could track it as opposed to using the device. But I'll defer to you, Chris.
Yeah, if you're persisting that setting, if you're just saying, I always want this app to be dark mode or use a dark theme. Like I said, we're doing light and dark. You could have multiple themes. You could have various different color palettes and decide and let the user pick what they want. So to get the image correctly, so let's just stop this and we'll just go to the about page, which has the image. And so we have our source here. It's just an arbitrary string. You could have that defined in your theme, and then it just becomes a dynamic resource. Themes are not just colors. You can have any property in there. So in this case, this could be Xamarin logo white, and then the dark theme it could be in a different color altogether, or completely different image. So as long as you're defining it as a dynamic resource, when you reload your theme file, it's going to pick it up there.
Oh, that's a good idea. We got a right on. Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions while we're in the code?
Not so much a question, but a comment during the beginning of the talk. We were chatting about Xamarin Essentials, and since 1.4.0 is coming out any day now, they created a new API for helping with light, dark, and other themes.
Yeah, that was actually going to be the next thing I'm going to talk about.
Oh, perfect.
So I have not looked closely what they added in Xamarin Essentials, but I was talking with David Ortonel last night about what I can and cannot say. Official dark mode support is going to be in Xamarin within the next 2 months. So the code that I showed you how to pick it up with platform renderers probably won't be necessary real soon. Um, you'll still need to code. You'll still need to do the themes, which is literally more work than detecting what theme you're in. But they're going to make it much easier to support dark mode. I looked. I couldn't find anything online that specifically said this was coming. I knew it was coming, and so I asked David last night, "Can I talk about it?" And he said yes. So I guess the stuff that's going in Xamarin Essentials is part of it, possibly.
I would say it's similar. From my understanding, I just learned this about Essentials recently, is it's not designed to work just with Xamarin.Forms. It's designed to work
Yes.
with anything Xamarin. So there is sometimes crossover of exact same APIs implemented in Essentials and in Xamarin.Forms.
Right.
So I would say it's similar to what they're trying to do in Forms. But I know that one of the devs messaged me earlier today about this presentation, and it sounds like they haven't fleshed out their exact approach yet.
There were some complications. So yes, um, but which is why it's not out now. I was told February, March timeframe, and I'm assuming it won't be just Xamarin Forms. I think it'll just be in Xamarin and available in Xamarin Forms. So I'm assuming that they're going to give you there'll be something that'll get fired to tell you when your theme changed. Because that'd be the most useful for you. But as you saw, there wasn't a lot of code there. So it's not that hard to put in there. You'll spend most of your work getting the theme colors correct for everything that you're working with. And another place that I saw where you can get a jarring mismatch if you don't support themes. If you do anything with a web view, let's say you're doing authentication and you have to call out to a web page, and it's got buttons on that. The web view will pick up the platform theme. So if you're in dark mode, you're going to get a web browser view that thinks it's in dark mode, even if your app doesn't support it, which can be really odd if the OpenID, whatever you're using for authentication, if the actual page being rendered doesn't fully support it, doesn't know. So it can get a little tricky. Cool. That's it. This isn't a really deep topic. But if anyone has any more questions, I got all the time for you guys.
All right. Well, I don't see anyone asking questions, so either speak now or wait till group time. I'm gonna we could I'm gonna take presenter over. I don't see any last minute questions. Where's my screen share button? All right. Well, we just learned about all of dark mode. That was exciting. Thanks, Chris, for a great talk.
Thank you.
I don't have an applause button or a stream deck or anything, so you get me clapping.
I thank you for not having an arbitrary applause button. I absolutely hate it when someone on a podcast does that.
Oh, I need to do that next time. All right, moving right along. If you want more Xamarin this month and you're on the other side of the pond in Ontario or close by, they're doing a Xamarin 101, I believe, with Dylan and Daniel from the Toronto Mobile.net Developers Group, and that's going to be on the 21st at 6 p.m. And they're going to be doing that at the Microsoft Reactor in downtown Toronto. So, be a good thing if you're in the area to attend and check out. And before we go into group time, our next meeting is going to be February 12th. So that's the second Wednesday of the month at 6:30 p.m. Again, that's 2020. I didn't update the dates because it's still 2019. I'm not ready for the Roaring 20s yet. But with all that, thanks everyone for attending, and thanks Chris for fantastic talk.
Yeah, I just want to say the same. Chris, thank you. It was a really good presentation. This is Andres, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.